Well, today we are honored to have one of the most respected historians in our community, Miss Peggy Allen Towns. A Decatur native, Miss Towns was employed by the United States House of Representatives, retiring in 2011 with 20 years of congressional services. Today she is the author of Duty Driven, The Plight of North Alabama's African Americans During the Civil War, Scottsboro Unmasked, Decatur's Story and Scapegoat, the Tommy Lee Hines Story. Ms. Towns lectures and facilitates workshops on genealogy, local people, and historic places. And she has been a catalyst in our community for identifying key landmarks to ensure their preservation for generations to come. We just recently had a landmark unveiling at Bank and Vine.
Correct.
And it was for voting rights.
Correct.
Is that, can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, absolutely. Many people don't know that Ellen Stevens Hildreth was the pioneering woman in Alabama to start actually what we call now the Women's Voters League. And in 1895, she invited Susan B. Anthony here to our town. And Susan B. Anthony and Miss Cat actually spoke near the location where we unveiled the marker a few months ago.
It was a nice turnout, and people were dressed in that era.
Indeed.
Yeah, it was very nice. And then whenever you speak, you do it with a lot of passion.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're always a joy to be with. Well, you've made an enormous impact in preservation in our community. Tell us about your love of local history and how you found your passion in preserving the voices and legacies of African Americans in our community.
Well, I give that to my mother, Myrtle Allen. She was the spark that contributed to my love for history and my siblings as well. Her mantra was, if you don't know where you've been, you'll never know where you're going. And so in our household as children, she provided us with the necessary tools. There were Ebony magazines, Jet magazines, African American books, so that we would know about who we were. And she was an only child. So her aunts and uncles, my great aunts and uncles, we were very close, and they were these wonderful storytellers. And while we knew the stories, when we got grown, of course, we loved to hear them tell them. We were just so attentive. But my mother passed in 2000. And so I thought, okay, I'll write these stories down for my grandchildren so that they will have them. And so that's actually how I got into genealogy. And, when you start talking about people here in Decatur, then there are all these other little nuggets of history that you find, and it just shows us how we're all connected. And so it's my passion actually to just tell the stories, be a voice for people. I grew up in Old Town, as you know, and that's the oldest community in Decatur, and I think it's given the least amount of attention until recently. But it's so sharing those stories, and not just my family stories, but I have a passion for sharing the stories of people in our community. And actually, I think it's our duty to preserve their voices.
Well, I think you're doing your duty for sure.
Thank you.
And then you talk about the nuggets that you find along the way. And I mentioned that whenever we were off air, I can go to Facebook most any day, and you have a new post on there with some type of nugget.
Right.
And it's always nice to be able to learn about that.
Thank you. And for example, with the Civil War, while researching my family's history, I found out that I had a family member out on a branch who was a USCT soldier, in the United States Colored Troop Regiment. And so from doing research on him, he was actually captured by Nathan Bedford Forrest over in Athens, carried to Mobile to work on the enemy's defense. But while doing research on him, I found that Decatur, Alabama, I call it our best kept secret. Decatur, Alabama is the first of only 2 towns in the state to actually organize a colored, as they call it back then, a regiment with black soldiers who fought for the Union Army. And you know, nowhere in our history books, nowhere hardly in our leaflets, nobody talks about the 106. Now we will pay homage to the 14th. There was a marker over at Rhodes Ferry Park, but we had citizens right here from Morgan County, from Decatur, who enlisted in the 106.
So who created that regiment?
The federal government. There were Union soldiers, and the Union soldiers with the African American regiments, they were commanded by white officers.
Okay. And roughly, what's the size of a regiment?
I forgot.
Okay, all right. Well, but still,
Yes.
that's just a piece of history that
Yes.
you were able to dive in and figure out.
Yes.
That's great. Well, now, you've also served our community through the House of Representatives, and that's the U.S. House of Representatives.
Correct.
And how would you say that your time in public service impacted your research as a historian?
Well, I can't really say that my job, I was a district aide, and my job was to assist constituents with issues or problems that they had with the federal government. Now, of course, while we were, they were talking about replacing the old Keller Bridge, I did do some research for my congressman and sent that information to DC for him to review. You know, remember when the bridge used to go up and down?
Yes, ma'am.
So, many of the companies or the businesses here said that they were unable to get people to come because of the fact that the bridge delayed them, and so
It did.
and so I did do some research on that, and I remember when they tore down the old meat packing house that was over near the yes, the congressman had asked me to do a little research, get some old newspaper articles and that kind of thing on that. But other than that, my job did not prepare me for this nudge of history
Okay.
that I've dived into primarily since I retired.
So I mean, you had 20 years of service.
Yes.
But did you actually start with Congressman Flippo?
No. I started with Bud Kramer.
Okay.
And actually, Mr. Flippo only had offices in Florence and Huntsville. And so when Bud became congressman, he wanted to have an in-between spot. And so Decatur was that spot. And so that we would be more convenient to our constituents. And so my office was at the courthouse on the 5th floor.
Okay.
The duration of my tenure.
Now, at that time, Decatur was kind of divided, not divided, it was in 2 different districts?
No. When I first started working, we had Morgan, Limestone, and Lawrence counties.
Okay.
And then later on, Lawrence County was divided. But Bud and Mr. Idaho, I believe it was, they had said, you know, we will still just work with, you know, any of these constituents. So that's primarily what happened.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. Very good.
But I enjoyed my job. I enjoy helping people. And so I just think it was a God-given for me to be placed in that position where I could help people.
Well, good. It has to be, and it had to be full of great memories as well.
Oh God, yes, yes, I have so many, and in particular, let me tell you, there was one when the Katrina victims, many of them came here, and there was a family in, I believe it was Hartselle, and they needed a water closet. Well, I did not know what a water closet was. I didn't know that was a toilet. So, but it's little things like that. I've enjoyed. I had my first VA claim, but was had a meeting in Lawrence County, and there was a gentleman there who had tried to get his VA claim for 35 years. But I told him, well, Peggy will be able to help you. And I was. So they finally rated him, and his rating went from 10% to 100%.
Right.
And the thing is that all through his case, his VA record showed evidence of this medical condition, but I guess no one took the time to look for
You
it.
did, though.
Yes.
Made a difference.
Yes.
And got him as 100%.
Yes.
And we're thankful for former Congressman Kramer in that he still makes himself available to us.
Yes.
And that means a lot. Well, you kind of touched on this a while ago as you talked about your mother, but we've all been taught that history passes along lessons for each generation. And in looking at Decatur's history, what are the lessons and patterns that you see emerge?
Well, I hope that the lessons are many. I hope that Decatur's history is a catalyst to engage us as we connect our past with our present. I hope that we are not just informed or enlightened, but that our history inspires us to make some positive changes, to be better, to do what's morally right. And I hope that it's inclusive and that it encourages us to truly see from another person's perspective, and in particular, people of color. You remember Atticus told Scout, until you walk in somebody else's skin, and that's what we need to do. And I think in every aspect of our being, we need to put ourselves in the other person's space, place, see what they might see. And I think it's so important, of course, our stories, they're not comfortable. They're not attractive. They ugly sometimes, but yet they're our stories. And I think that we can learn from them if we are open-minded and if we open our hearts. Point is, when we whitewash our history, when we don't tell the accurate story, when we ignore portions of it, it's a real disservice, not just to our future generations, but to us as well, because we won't grow. We won't learn from those experiences.
So to understand the different cultures, I'm trying to come off of what you just said. Sometimes people want to be able to go, or residents want to be able to go and talk with one of our African American residents and say, hey, help me understand how you feel or in certain situations. And I've learned that it's for me to go and do my own research and understand, so that I'm sensitive to those needs, and that I've shown that I put forth the effort to understand myself, and it seems to come across to being more appreciated whenever that happens. And can you say that in a way that makes better sense out of what I just tried to say?
Well, there are some people who will talk to you and they will tell you exactly how it is, period. And then I guess in other instances, what you're alluding to is that you just have to get out there. And you know, I think that when we get out there, we find that we're actually more alike than not.
Sure, sure.
You get to know me. You get to know my concerns. You get to know what I like. You get to know that I'm concerned about not my neighborhood just as you are over here in your neighborhood. We have the same concerns. I'm concerned about my child's education. I'm concerned about my child getting picked up going to jail because of the color of their skin. I'm concerned about that. And I think that once we identify, maybe that's the correct word, identify with one another, we will be better. Our city is what it is because of all of our contributions, not just a certain populations, but all of our contributions. And I think that when we recognize that fact, we can be better people.
So from the outside looking in, we've never had a detailed conversation like this. We've had a lot of conversations, but I think that's what I perceive you trying to show with Old Town and the history that you're laying out, that the contributions that Old Town had on this city and Old Town itself in making sure that we were a strong city, not just Old Town, but the city as a whole.
Right. And for, you're the mayor and you represent everybody, but every councilman on here needs to realize too that they not only represent their district, but they also represent Decatur, Alabama.
Yes, ma'am.
And so I think it's imperative that we hold on to that. But you know, we've made some progress, but we still have a long ways to go. And I think like events such as the Scottsboro Boys trial, the Tommy Lee Hines trial, I think that they shouldn't just illuminate for us these egregious acts of injustice, but also there should be some reconciliation there, that we can find some solutions to healing, some healthy relationships, some hope, some progress. I think those are the lessons that we can learn, and not just from the history in Old Town, because many people, when they go to Old Town, as you know, they see all the empty lots. They have no idea of the vibrant community that was there when I grew up. They have no idea that the houses were just like many of those there in Old Town. And they just don't know. And so I feel that it's my passion to let people know. You know, when you disvalue a person or a community, it's harmful. It hurts that community. And so I feel that it's, I guess, partly my job to let people see that the Vine Street Business District was viable. There were cleaners, there were doctors, there were barbers, there were restaurants, cafes, nightclubs. You know, all of these things were there on Vine Street. And you know what? Now there is one business. Well, what happened? It was urban renewal. It was urban renewal. And so those are stories that I think that need to be told. I think we need to share that the people, the places, the spaces that were there, I think is vital that we let not just Old Town know, but all of Decatur know how important this neighborhood was to our city. Of course, it was, you know, I grew up during segregation, but the area, the neighborhood, it was viable to our city as well.
So as I was born in '59 and got my license in '76, something like that. And I can remember you're talking about Vine Street, so I can remember Joseph's grocery store, and then Busy Bee, and of course I've shared the Miss Francis's painting or watercolor of Busy Bee in the office. How one of the Roberts brothers would drive the van home, but I don't remember a lot of the other stores. But I went to work for the Decatur Daily in 1979, and I was responsible for our paper carriers in that district in northwest Decatur. And if I didn't have a carrier, guess who got to deliver the papers and collect them?
You did.
I certainly did. And so I still remember the homes on Geddes and McCarthy and all those, and how the neighborhood was still vibrant at the time. Not necessarily the business district. It had already started seeing a decline. But I didn't have an appreciation at 22 years old.
For that history.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
And see, I also, my brother and I have a paper outlet too. My sisters inherited it. But the people are fascinating. I tell you what I found when I wrote my Scottsboro Boys book, and I had no idea. Well, you know, with the landmark Second Supreme Court ruling that jurors could not systematically exclude blacks, and so with the Welch jury bill, they had to come back and include blacks on jury rolls. Well, some of the first blacks here in Morgan County were my neighbors. When I read their names in the newspaper, I thought, oh my God, and they never talked about it. My grandmother, she was the first African-American female pastor preacher in Morgan County and surrounding counties. You know, so we have that history. Dr. Sturz, while I didn't know him, Mrs. Sturz, you know, I remember Sunny Lodge, their home. I remember the old cottage home infirmary, all of those. I remember those. I remember the Sykeses, you know, I remember going by their homes with I used to love the wrought iron fence that was around their home. So those are things that I remember, and to put those connections together with the part that they played in history, it's just amazing to me.
So whenever I would go in, I'm glad that you have those memories and that you're able to share. Whenever I would go and do the collections for the newspaper, you know how you'd have a little stub and you would leave it and such, and go into the homes, and typically there was a picture on the wall of Christ, and then one of Dr. King, and then one of
Dr. Carver, probably.
Well, that or really I saw a lot of President Kennedy, of course, even in the 70s. So a nice part of history. Now, since we've been acquainted, which has been really about 2015, 16, whenever I got to know you a little bit, and then have grown to know you more since then, and I'm thankful for that. There's been a lot of markers placed around the area, and so right now we wanted to do one for Dr. Jemison, the first black our first African American female in space, and who was born, her birthplace here in Decatur.
Correct.
And so we're wanting to have a marker placed at that location, and so I reached out to Senator Orr about being able to help with that, and I guess it typically goes.
She's not dead.
Well, no. Get with Peggy and let her do the verbiage. You got to get her to do the writing, and then we'll get it done. And that's been all these markers that's been around. You've worked on getting the verbiage and then Senator Orr, and then also through funding through various other ways,
Right.
help with getting these markers placed. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, it all has been a team effort, and 'cause I can't, I'm not responsible for all of this by myself. It's been a team effort, and I don't want to start naming names because I'll surely forget somebody, but I'm just so appreciative. The very first item that I was involved with, I had gone to Selma with my husband, and they had an African American brochure. And so that's, I came back, I said, you know, we need to do something here in Decatur. And so I got on my computer and I wrote something up. I shared it with Reverend Ragland. We had now this leaflet and we carried it to the tourism board. And at that time, Tammy was there and presented it to her. She thought it was a great idea. And we're just so thankful to the tourism board for producing the flyer that I gave you. Yeah, that's our second edition. And but there have been so many people who too have a genuine concern about sharing Old Town's history in particular. So
a real passion for it.
Yes.
A real passion.
So
And
kudos
you're
to them.
very wise in not naming names. You don't want to get caught. But you did mention Dr. Ragland, and he is one to make sure that, boy, he'll contact me about a display or some type of something at the archives. And
Right.
man, he'll go check the register to make sure that I signed in.
And you know, the archives has a wealth of information. If you're looking for something, land deeds, just left there, met with David Burleson and we were trying to make some connections with Dr. Sturz. I simply wanted to know, when did he purchase the land there on the corner of Washington and Vine Street? And when did he build his home? Well, David did some research for me, and he found out that the lot was purchased in 1891. Dr. Sturz, our first African American doctor, came here in 1890, and you know, he actually built established the Cottage Home Infirmary. That was the first hospital in town, predating the benevolent hospital that we knew as Decatur General, and now the Decatur campus of Huntsville Hospital. But it actually predated that. That's our history. That's a part of us, and to me, it's very important that we share that information. Again, when we say when we don't provide accurate information, it's a disservice to all of us.
Well, you're certainly giving your best to doing that. And so with that, why don't you share with our viewers about your latest project, the Old Town Decatur, Alabama Mobile Tour?
Oh, it is just so fascinating. I'm so excited. The tour is actually, and I think it's just perfect with the pandemic uprising again. We, in conjunction with the Mosa Shows National Heritage Area, have markers here in Decatur, and it's an on-sale project. And what it does is give a glimpse of Old Town history. And it's just really amazing. It's self-guided, and it's about people and places, and have these wonderful photos too that are included in it. And it actually speaks volume to our history. For example, the oldest standing structure in Decatur is included, the Dancy Polk House.
That's the oldest standing
structure. Yes, and of course, the once thriving Vine Street Business District, Lakeside, the churches, the oldest churches in Old Town, but also the Old State Bank building is included. And some people might say, oh, Old State Bank, that's not Old Town. Yes, it was Old Town before it was gerrymandered into another district. So, you know, just knowing those facts about our history is so important. And when we fail to recognize that, that's a problem for me. But the tour is contactless, and all you do is take your mobile device and scan the QR code. Have you gone on it yet?
I haven't.
You need to. Scan the QR code, open it up, and then there's this amazing history of that particular site. There are 11 sites, and we're just so excited about it.
Well, I hope very soon you'll be able to ask me if I've gone and I can say yes.
I certainly will.
Well, look, thank you so much for taking your time to join us today and to share with our viewers. We appreciate what you're doing for our community. I know that while this is one of the big areas of your work, you do a lot of other volunteer work in our area.
It's my pleasure.
And we certainly appreciate that.
Thank you.
And to our viewers, we're very happy that you joined us today and heard from yet another amazing member of our community. We would ask that you text Decatur to 42828, that's 42828, to sign up for the city's digital newsletter. Until next time, be safe, and as always, we ask that you be kind. Thank you.